This is like the last one.
School. Again, when we did that,
I've gotten from groups or online more information.
This is like the last one, but even in the middle school and high school science.
well, for track.
Opinions and thoughts about, not really constantly, probably on a month.
Start our clubs, drinks, and that's a driving force for them.
Things like the 100-mile foot race, those are common. Societies, universities, academia, learn and flourish.
Both amateur radio and some groups. So thank you, Barry.
Wes, Martha here.
What's up? Where's everybody at? I'll give everyone a minute to get into the meeting room. Just kidding. I know where everyone's at. They're not here because Good Game hasn't done a stream tonight. He's out in the boonies camping, I guess. He actually put out a post. Let me find it again if I can. But normally I get a big boost of viewers from him. What thing YouTube really sucks at is this like idea of community posts. So it's like these things, little pictures and some blurbs. It's like social media, right? But like I can't go back and see like a post I saw once I already saw it. Like if I click this one and then I read it and I go back, refresh the page, it's going to be different. In fact, they're all different. And no one really uses, like the usability of these things is pretty poor because you just see 4. Like, and it's not very useful unless you have like things turned on, I guess. And also, I know why people aren't here. It's because, well, good, they can hear me, but because I just put this up, this video up like a minute ago. But that's okay. I'm just gonna take the easy route and play you guys a video, like I'm the substitute teacher, and give my commentary and see if more people come in, I'll like banter more. But you know, it is what it is. I'm pretty chill. I just had a migraine yesterday, and there goes my wife dying. Not corona. She can't even hear me. She's dead to the world. Wearing silencing headphones like these. She's wearing these, except she has her own pair. She's like, "What? Are you talking about me?" Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Oh.
You were hacking a lung up.
Oh, sorry. It's the popcorn.
People are like, Corona? No, it's popcorn. So let me find that video, and we'll get a move on. So tonight's going to be about solutions workshop. What does that mean? Well, we're coming up with actual solutions. How can we get young people into ham radio? How can we get them more interested? How can we get ham radio more interesting to young people in general? That's kind of the idea. And so we're going to review the homework that none of you did, that all of you did. No, that very few of you did. Hello, dog. And see what kind of trends and stuff we can see out of there. I'll caveat, I didn't really like massage or go through the data like well, so it's kind of ugly, but I don't think you really mind, will ya? So let me go into there. Let me go into here. Go into here. See how this does. That get you down because I'm not going anywhere. This is kind of well, it's an unpaid job. My volunteer gig in amateur radio is for the youth in ham radio, so I'll be around. I just wanted to finalize and conclude and like kind of show off the results and the homeworks that we had, and talk about some gather some solutions, some real like workable solutions. And of course, throughout the entire conference or whatever we've been doing, the workshop series, I've been collecting all the notes. You've had the emails from Dan, like the follow-up emails. I've been writing down all sorts of stuff, and right now that is as legible as chicken scratch, but on an electronic format. So I'm still working to kind of like develop maybe some sort of report or thing that other people can use this to see that, little workshop series like this are really really valuable. So without further ado, I'm just taking a few more notes real quick so I don't forget some points. The solutions workshop is now. So the first week, which was actually, I call it week 0, was when this first started. Is the homework I put out was what do you expect to learn from this workshop? And I wanted to look back on these and see, if I've met your expectations. Looking for ideas what leaders to do with kids at school club meetings, mostly just ideas on what would help to get folks involved, not worried about not enough people, just reaching the people who might be interested. I'm interested in helping young hams in amateur radio. My daughter is a ham, and it would be great for her to have more people her age to talk with. Learn ways to get kids interested in a radio and school system that claims to support STEM, but really does very little in that regard, so helping them out support STEM in a better way. And, and then a lot of smaller responses that were just generally to get youth into the hobby. And it was very interesting to see there was a 12-year-old in there. So it would be interesting to learn what adults think about youth. And that's what we talked about in the Kids These Days presentation. And it was interesting to see the everyone's, observations and opinions and thoughts about young people today, these days. And then this funny one at the bottom, to be honest, I didn't attend the meeting. I don't know why it came through this question, but generally I think I did my best. I hopefully met most of these questions through these workshops, and if not, I have a very open line, so I can help with that. If there's specific things, I've really generalized a lot because That's just the nature of the beast of my beast. Like there's since there's so many niches and facets in ham radio, um, I have to be general. So, we talk about like schools. I have a little bit of experience in like elementary and middle and high schools, but a lot of experience in college. But I understand that a lot of people here are teachers and educators, and volunteers and the like, and they have a big like portion. And you guys out there, I need your help to. We all need your help to get it better out there, and then other parts and places. And also, excuse me if I sound like I have a lisp. I have I bit my tongue really bad like yesterday, and I'm talking funny. I'm just noticing it. So, and I'm drinking sparkling water, and so that's not helping. But oh well. Hopefully, I'm still legible. Anyway, so I had some graphs, and this didn't organize itself. It organized in how I arranged the questions, but you can clearly see that what our perception, us section managers here and the like, and assistants and whatnot, what they think, what we think is the biggest problem is competing interests, with 82% of the 35 responses showing that up, and then followed by equally aging population hams and a lack of mentors and elmers. So high cost is interesting because just recently, and we haven't talked about this, but the $50 entrance fee that's been proposed, basically the entrance fee or the licensing fee through the new FCC fee schedule has come up. So that might be a much bigger, a bigger thing. So, and then a lot of these other ones, I think everyone kind of just like clicked on the board of like all these problems that ham radio has, but it's clear to see like, yeah, we have to deal with like competing interests. I was talking with somebody a few nights ago about how we compete with Fortnite, and we mentioned like how with the 21st century relevancy talk about how ham radio is a game. Like you can make it a game. We have contesting, we have radio sport, and we can also integrate with those technologies to bring like things like matchmaking lobbies that are very like common in video gaming to the ham radio world, to make it easier just to hop on the air and have a contest, really short informal contest, but a contest nonetheless. It seems to me on that note that a lot of these contests are like big championship style events. Like your score really counts for something. If you get the highest score, you get like a plaque, and I'm talking mainly the big ones like IRA UHF, CQ Worldwide, ARRL-HF, yada yada yada. There are plenty of smaller contests that are like on a weekly basis, but definitely not enough, and definitely none that are like ad hoc, that you can just get on the radio and be like, all right, I'm going to match up with like 5 other people on the radio, and we're going to have a mini contest and turn it into something like Parks in the Air, where you all send out a spot and a little contest bubbles up for 30 minutes, just out of thin air, and then after that we're done. After that it's done, and then you get a score, and then it doesn't really have to add up to a big championship leaderboard, but it could. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, the one thing I can't help with is aging, and the sad fact of life is we all get older. But the one thing that I can do to help with that is try to bring more young people in through all of these things, through all of these ideas, right? And that's what we're here to do. Okay. Week 1 was the talk about the 21st century relevancy or relevance of ham radio. I suggested everyone watch a video from the RSGB about the future and growth of amateur radio from Kamal Singh, who went on to leave the RSGB. He was Mike 0 IOV, India Oscar Victor, I think. But he's moved back to his homeland to focus on personal things. Also notice I only had 8 responses on the survey, so some people failed their homework. But at least I got good responses, and I think it's indicative of kind of the whole crowd. But most people did watch the video, and most people do think ham radio is relevant, and I kind of expanded on that, and I think I didn't put any of the other pie charts in here because they were just like small. But essentially everyone does believe that the IoT, the Internet of Things, not everyone, but most people believe that IoT, it would be beneficial for ham radio to leverage and partner with like the IoT industry and the communication systems industry that are leading the charge in like the next generation of the revolution of technology would be really helpful for ham radio, and I don't think anybody would disagree. But to do that, would require a very large multi-pronged approach, and we would have to be nimble on our feet and have a lot of money and clout, and basically do a lot of I think joint events similar to First Robotics, and we mentioned that as well. So this is what are your ideas for improving ham radio? I had some good ideas here, kind of generic and general, but mostly it was schools. I had schools, college. So schools and college really resound. Almost all of these are about schools. We need to integrate younger hams into our groups or we will not survive. Take time to assist new hams, going back to mentorship. Better marketing, which is one of my favorites. I'm not a marketer. I'm an electrical engineer, believe it or not, but I really find a lot of interest in like marketing and publicity and that sort of thing, and focusing on audiences opportunity. And then I had one response that was just not applicable. No ideas here, so that's fine. I think we've come up with a bunch of ideas, and I already see the chat starting to pop off with some ideas and suggestions, so that's good. And then I also went into week 2, Show Me Ham Radio. And I was really surprised at this. We had 12 responses. Again, a lot of fails, but that's fine. With 7, over half of you having a YouTube channel. And even though only 41% of you, less than half, actually created a ham radio video, you are overwhelmingly willing to create one after that. So I'm hoping to see the results of that. If you have created a YouTube video, or if you have a YouTube channel, I recommend or highly suggest you share it in the chat so we can see what you have, and so we can share your works, whether they're good, whether they're meh, whether you think they're amazing or not. That's what we kind of said back then. It doesn't really matter. I read a book last night called YouTube Secrets, and it's really no secret. If you have a passion and an intrinsic interest in sharing your hobby, sharing your abilities and skills and thoughts and experiences, then you can be a YouTuber. Like, it's not that hard. Just turn on a camera and start talking to it, or film a thing on your desk and just start doing stuff and post it to YouTube. Somebody will watch it. You might inspire somebody. And that is one of the, I think, best ways to get young people at least a mild interest in the ham radio. You might not see it immediately, and you might not see it ever, but even I have this pretty small channel of only about 2,000 subscribers now, which is very small in the realm of YouTube. And even in the realm of ham radio YouTubers, that's still pretty small. But I get emails constantly, not really constantly, probably on a monthly basis, of saying, hey, I was 12 years old when I subscribed to you in 2010, seems to be the right year, and now I'm your age, or about your age. Now I'm 20, and now I'm 22, and yada yada yada. So and they got into ham radio and this sort of thing and that sort of thing, and because of my video on me pointing an antenna into space in the front yard, they were suddenly interested in ham radio, or just discovered it, because YouTube just shoves those things into the sidebar. Whenever you're watching random things, you'll just randomly get a different thing in your sidebar, and it might be ham radio sometimes, and that's how, I don't know, I would consider thousands, if not tens of thousands of people have gotten into ham radio through that kind of interface or exposure. But so it's also interesting to see that one of you out there has TikTok. It wasn't me who replied, so that's pretty cool. And a few other people responded with websites and stuff for their club. So it's a really good sign. Most of you have some sort of creative outlet or anything. So that's really good. And I think that's a big help. So, and then this is actually the last slide. It's only been 20 minutes and I've been rambling, but I really wanted to get into like more of a conversation. So keeping it short. The State of the Hobby Survey is ran by N8RMA, Dustin. And this link here is clickable when you get the thing. In fact, if I could, no, I can't. Oh, I killed it. Let me go back to that. Come back. All right. And bottom, oh, for crying out loud. I wanted to read my mind, but it isn't. This will do. So the State of the Hobby Survey, this asked the 3,500 people all over the internet, because it was an online survey, what is the biggest issues facing the hobby, and what do you perceive as the biggest issue facing the hobby? And literally in the same way that our week 0 results had back up here with competing interests and the aging populations of hams, that correlates 1-to-1 with general lack of interest and the operator base aging out. Different uses of words, but I think it's pretty much the same thing. And the orange bar is what's really the largest perceived issue. But then I have to remember how he did this, but that's what you really want to focus on, is what do you perceive to be the largest issue, is that orange bar there. And so that was really interesting to me to see this huge survey of 3,000 people to have like almost the same exact what do you call it, like correlation, I guess, as us. So all right, so that's like all my slides. Wasn't much. I just wanted to go through and review some of the answers to the homeworks, and then now we can talk about got a lot of stuff in the chat to look at, and if anybody wants to raise their hand and bring through comments, basically looking at those questions of, how can we deal with the operator base aging out, people getting older, and bringing more young people into the hobby generically, but also focusing on things like how can we incentivize or encourage all of our friends, all of our ham friends, to be an elmer or a mentor to the young ham. Ideas of getting into schools, we've talked about that a lot, and I'm sure there's more out there to be said. And while we're discussing, I'll be smashing it into my keyboard. This is a recorded session, obviously, so it'll also be recorded for posterity. And with that, I think I'm going to take a drink and rest my bitten tongue for a second. And just kind of open it up. And you have to unmute yourself.
Chat, someone was mentioning having school club competitions for the kids. Could you mention something about that and how hard that is to set up?
School club competitions. Well, I'm surprised actually. I don't see him in here, but the creator of the school club roundup is one thing, but the ad hoc kind of club ideas, or actually one of the things I did through not through the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, but a similar sort of thing, was interlacing contests that are going on, like the NAQP, with a sub contest, the Collegiate Amateur Radio or Collegiate Championship College contest. So you would operate exactly like you would in NAQP, but your score would be compared with all of the college entrants. And so that was the one way. And I'm like looking at Dennis, you're actually the question asker there, and your hand's raised. So go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, my observation was we're at the high school and at 2 middle schools. And at the high school level, if I look at all the clubs that are active, computer club or whatever club you want to talk about, they almost all have a competition with other schools and other school districts. And that's a driving force for them. They have all these competitions.
Oh, yeah. You mean like rivalries?
Like rivalries, right. And they get announced every week. The results of their competitions or interactions are announced on the announcements. And, it's a big deal. I mean, it kind of drives the kids to do that. And we don't have any of that. I mean, I think there's a total of like maybe 4 or 5 school clubs in Michigan, and they're pretty spread apart. And there's nothing, really organized that they could focus on. And, you mentioned the school club roundup, and that's a really good thing, except it comes in October, like a week after we start our clubs. So there's no chance to really prepare for that until February comes, and stuff like that.
Right.
And I understand that that's a big challenge to develop something like that, but I think that's a big piece that's missing that if that were available would be helpful.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking there, and me and Ward Silver in Zero X really thought about this a lot, and we had the same kind of idea of like, we need to invoke the rivalries. We need to like get the Big Ten versus SEC versus ACC versus this, that, and the other thing. And it was really hard to get it to come to fruition. Even though we have a lot of college clubs out there, it was hard keeping them active on contesting, because basically the only thing we could really get them to do was HF, just basic HF contesting and just compare scores. But there's a whole range of other opportunities like design competitions, radio design competitions. Oscar will inevitably have to talk about his rocketry or high altitude ballooning or something like that, and doing things that integrate ham radio into engineering things, or even things like communications milestones, like the golden packet, but for colleges, like how far can you send a Wi-Fi signal or something like that. So other little sub competitions in the radio space would be really interesting. But to collect the entire collect the same kind of like collegiate rivalries is one of the tenets or one of the missions of the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, which is being run by the Maluzzi brothers, Tony and Andy. And I was running it for a while, and I still am a Facebook admin, but they've generally just been doing like these weekly, or I think monthly actually, workshops similar to this, but with all the colleges out there. And so there might be some stuff going on that I'm just not aware about, since I almost said retired from college, since I graduated from college. So I'd hook up with them, and I can give you their info and see what they have.
Martha here. I'm the section youth coordinator from Georgia. And I'm not so much into the contesting, and I don't think most students are. I think one way to get the students pepped up about this is get them involved in your activities. And hopefully your activities include things like public events. When a village has a festival of some sort, have a ham radio booth. Invite the students that you're working with to come join you, demonstrating the various things that you've hopefully shared with them. Obviously, this is not happening during the pandemic, and then follow up with some press. Indeed, students and especially school administrators thrive on positive publicity involving their students. Write articles. The students from X, Y, and Z were here at this event doing this, that, and the other. And we should, photos, all kinds of good things. Mm-hmm. I'll hush now.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I do know a lot of young people through college were really into contesting, but at the same vein, a lot of them weren't, because I mentioned a little while ago, it was hard to get them to do like kind of a single concerted thing, or think of a single concerted thing or discrete thing that could like end up with being a score and be a competition and yada, yada, yada. But there was a whole other group of hams that weren't into contesting, were more into like, repeaters, or one of them was more into developing building radios. And then you had a whole bunch of them that did events. So things like the 100-mile foot race through the Ozark Mountains, or the rally in the 100-acre wood, or they would do high altitude balloons for the high school and elementary school, and launch teddy bears up into space, etc. So we did. We had a lot of outreach we paired up with the IEEE section at Rolla at Missouri S&T to bring stuff like that to the high school, because we would have like this every semester. We'd have an assembly for middle school and high school students, trying to recruit them into the university, but also bringing like, what cool stuff can we do? And so ballooning was one of those ISS things and satellite things. And we'd actually drive in our robots and stuff. And a lot of times W0EEE had a say in it too. And was able to publicize ham radio as a, traditional activity, but also as a tool for all of these other spaces, So I like I really like your points. The hard part there is, you know, like we've always said with a lot of schools is like the principal doesn't want to deal with it, or it's too much money, or this, that, and the other thing. And obviously the pandemic is going to throw a damper on that for sure. I'm really interested in seeing what creative people come up with, trying to do the same sort of stuff, but with Zoom and with online webinars and that sort of thing. It's probably not going to be the same, but maybe it'll be something. I don't know. Okay.
I have another comment I'd like to make if I could.
Sure.
Well, two comments. One is, if you think about the technology side of things versus the operating side of things, the students, a large majority of them are more interested in the electronics part of it, and as opposed to the operating part of it. We have a percentage of the students that do like to operate, but most of them are interested in the electronic side of things, as you mentioned. The other thing, have you heard of the Science Olympiad?
Yeah.
Well, I was a mentor for the Science Olympiad the last 2 years in one of the middle schools, and specifically for the electronics side of things, electricity and electronics. And I was very disappointed to see that there wasn't anything in there relevant to amateur radio. And this is something the questions are put together by IEEE. And if somebody has an in with IEEE and could convince them to incorporate amateur radio somehow into those questions and discussions, it's a built-in way established way to make contact with the kids. And if you could get amateur radio into that, I would be tremendous.
Yeah, the IEEE is how I met, or how I got through, and I mentored, or I don't think I mentored, but I actually developed and put together some of the same thing, electronics sides. And of course I put in ham radio in some way, shape or form. I didn't put in a ham radio, but I put in a transmitting, receiving laser diode system where basically you had to transmit music over a certain area, over a distance, with a solar panel and a laser diode, just so I didn't have to deal with licensing and such. But a lot of flyers and W0EEE like swag and like ham radio and a radio, like there was kind of a showcase, if you will, in the room, showing off ham radio. And it was like, it got some interest, and a few people like signed up for more information, but it was a good way to like kind of go, oh, you know, that stuff over there is pretty cool, while you're trying to solve a communications problem and on, you know, other electronic stuff. So I do think that's a really good idea. I wrote that down, and I know some people in the Science Olympiad community and obviously IEEE community, so that would be a really great thing to like incorporate. I love how radio is just so inclusive. If you're an electrical engineer, it has every aspect of electronics, a radio, all the way from, you know, AC, DC circuitry, you know, basic electronics, all the way up to electromagnetics, which is like the black magic side of things. There's not much else like it, and this is why it's such a good tool to use. And I wish more and more societies, universities, academia would use it as such, even in the middle school and high school science, you know, area. But you know, we also have to teach them social studies and English and stuff. So. Any more questions or comments? Let's see. I see Barry, you said the planning group should be gathering resources to enable section youth coordinators to be more effective. Yeah, so actually, here's a solutions workshop question for all of you. The section youth committee, and I know Martha, or the section youth coordinators, Martha, you're one of them. I don't know if anybody else is, but I've been working with a few of the SYCs. Anthony Luskery is one of them, K8ZT, and Grant, W4KEK. Just kind of understanding what is the section youth coordination system, what are they good at, what are they doing, what are their roles, you know, who do they report to, you know, these sorts of things, and what can we do to better them, because that system is a really good distributed means of distributing information and ideas and thoughts and getting the word out, but also coordinating, like actually liaisoning and coordinating and operating some sort of like concerted youth effort or campaign or idea. So Dan, WL7CCO, hands raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sterling, I think Martha's comment got to me some. For the last couple of decades of my career, I had the pleasure of working with interns for summer appointments that they were not funded out of my budget, but it was my responsibility to make sure they met their goals and served the park's purposes as well. And I kind of discovered that competition, I recoiled when such a big deal was made about contests as an attraction.
Sorry, Dan, you got muted. There you go.
Yeah, got muted a couple times. But encouraging them to compete only with themselves and make sure that they learned what they wanted to learn every day when they came to work seemed to elicit a much more, dedicated kind of performance than anything that had anything to do with competition with others. Because I think youth are instinctively shy about that. And if they're overly competitive, it's typically a sign of some issues, I think. So I just thought I'd surface that as there are, amateur radio is all inclusive. And we do, I think, experience a greater selection of the demographics that our nation is comprised of than any other kind of vocation or hobby I can think of, except perhaps the military. And that's a whole different undertaking. So I just wanted to make that point clear, that I think sometimes people will compete harder with themselves than against their peers. And they end up being more inclusive and better team players.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's why I must like golf so much, because it's not really a game about competing with other people. It's about competing with yourself, and a lot of people, even going back to contesting, they're more interested in competing versus like the world or their station or their previous record or anything, and just bettering their skills over time. So I hear your point there. That's a good thing to considering. Because my thoughts are kind of clouded in the eye of like, well, we're competing against Fortnite and Call of Duty and all of these things, which are video games against other players, and so there's this idea that there's competition and so on and so forth. But not every kid plays video games, so a lot of young people are very intrinsically into competing with themselves or learning and bettering themselves. Nerds like me, I guess. I didn't play too many video games from back in the day, so it's a good point.
Hi, Martha here again.
Okay.
One of your words in your last sentence resonates. Nerds. I hope no one takes offense at that. That's facts are facts. The kids who are drawn to ham radio, first off, they may not know it until they're exposed to it, but they do tend to be the nerdy ones. I love that. I'm okay with that. I had to explain to our headmaster at one point, not everyone's going to go out for track. Not everyone's going to go out for drama. This is a hobby and interest that appeals to certain ones, but those to whom it appeals, it really resonates. That's something to encourage. If you find folks who want to compete, go for it. But the best thing that our local ham club did with the students that I had at my school, again, they got them involved. If they were doing a presentation at another school, they took students from my school to go help the students at another school. Again, when we did festivals, my students were there working side by side with these guys. That is so empowering. And that's going to reach the kids deep down, and you're going to have them for a good amount of time. I'm not a contester by any stretch of the imagination. If my kids want to do that, that's fine. When we did the school club roundup, we did it as a show and tell for ham radio. We invited anybody in the hall to come on down and play radio for a while. If we got points, yay. We didn't do it as a contest. We did it as fun. You got to figure out where you're going for.
Mm-hmm. I remember in the hallways at college, we did the same thing in school club roundup because it was more of a showcase. Like, get as many people on the air as you can that are in schools that are younger. Kids day as well. You know, and we would put our station. We would take our station out of our shack, which was like all set up and nice, and literally just move it to the hallway right in front of this huge 200-person lecture hall. And we sit in there. They'd have to walk over these cables, trip hazard, but they would hear us doing CW and single sideband, and making contacts casually. Had the cables just running out the door, and had a speaker not too loud, but loud enough to be like, people would look over, and most people are gonna be like weirdos, but some people are gonna be like, huh, like what is this? And even back when I recognized this back when I was the youth editor for ARRL. A lot of my articles mention like everyone was trying to get all young people into ham radio, as if like ham radio is the great savior of youth, or that every young person in the world will flock to it if they just heard about it. But that's simply not true. I agree with you, Martha, where like it's a certain kind of person that will come to ham radio, and it's our duty as hams and mentors and elmers that we encourage that and facilitate making ham radio a great place for them to learn and flourish. And we can always try things that reach out into the rest of the world, like gaming and other sciences and integration with technology and that sort of thing, so that our spread is, our reach is farther, and we can grab more people more easily. But at the end of the day, what we're grabbing out of those pools are the most interested, the most curious, the most nerdy, the most, scientifically literate or curious, people who just like kind of find the resonance, if you will. So. All right. So you mentioned, you got the question that all the section youth coordinators are listed on the ARRL has individual section websites, and if you look for where you find where your section manager is, if your section has a youth coordinator, they're listed there, but a lot of them don't. I think there's about 38 or 28 or 38 section youth coordinators right now, and so there's a lot needs to be done to fill them out, but maybe not. And we were thinking about like maybe a division sort of youth coordination system that kind of like had this like hierarchy, but the division directors aren't too into that. The division directors are more into like the execution and operation of ARRL and that sort of thing, but the field organization is into the field organization things that isn't like directly, and so bringing it up to them, it was kind of a battle, like to say, hey, can we have like a youth coordinator position in staff or at the director level, or somebody that reports like to the divisions? But they were like, nah. So there's a lot of power and a lot of interesting capabilities that the section youth coordination system could bring if we all kind of work together. And that's just my opinion, but I don't know how many people are familiar with that. I think we need to grow it, and I think that'll be coming up sooner or later. But I'm trying to. I'm so spread so thin, and have so many irons in the fire that trying to keep up with everybody, or trying to get everybody to keep up with these progressions are getting harder. So. All right, I've had just about enough rambling. I think you all have too. So if there's any more questions out there, I think I've got through most of the chat. And I'll give it back to Dan.
Okay, give it back to Dan.
All right.
Give it to Danny. He'll do everything. Well, I appreciate all the comments and the stuff that's going on in the chat as well. We really need to keep this kind of stuff going, get some new ideas and such. We're working on some new plans coming up. We don't know if it's going to finalize or not, but Sterling and a bunch of other guys are really involved with the youth and us are trying to get some good things going. So I want you to stay tuned. Like for those that haven't, to join the new hams. group.
Now offering Spectrum Mobile.
Uh-oh. Thanks, Dennis. Anyway, um, uh, we need to keep this stuff going. There's lots of good experience in here, comments, Martha's comments, and you name it. There's just a bunch of people in here got a lot of good experience, got gut feeling what works and what doesn't. And that's what we need to have out there. We need to get outside the box. One of the problems we got is us. We're not teenagers anymore. And we keep thinking how it was when we were a teenager. And we can't get in their minds. We need them to get in our minds and help us move forward. So we got to find ways of making that happen. And so stay tuned. Next week we'll be back with something else. And want you all be a part of it. And we really do want your comments. Again, join the New Hams deal. That's where a lot of discussions go on, and we need to hear from you. We need to get the input and ideas. Are there any more hands raised or comments to make?
Nothing that I can see, but you will be sending this out to the mail list, right, Dan? And there will be links to join the New Hams in there?
Yes, as usual. Yeah, when I send out the video, I always send that saying, join the New Hams, so you get another chance there. And please include your name and call sign. Everybody's in there is a name and call sign type of a thing.
The use of remote amateur radio access. I just thought of a great idea. When we've been going around to schools to set up radios, it's been very difficult to find a place to set up an antenna and a radio, and especially now that we're in the depths of the sunspot cycle, to get propagation. But they have remote access sites that have some very nice equipment that you could hook up to via the internet. And most schools have internet, so you wouldn't have to drag around a transceiver and a radio and an antenna and the whole setup. All you need to do is be able to have the software on the computer to be able to access the remote via internet. And you could do a pretty decent demo with amateur radio that way. For example, talking to France for a French class to be able to give the students a chance to practice their conversational French, or Germany, or Spain, or whatever country you want to try. That's an excellent use of remote amateur radio, and it's something we should all consider. Back to Nick.
Okay, thank you. Wes, do you have some comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just figure I'd throw a question out there that has come to me. I'm right now in the middle of doing I actually had a homeschool group ask me if I would to teach them ham radio. So we've been doing about, a group of maybe 30 people in the park, and the question I've gotten from a lot of the homeschool moms is, what book should I buy? And I've really been struggling with that one, because I find that there's kind of two classifications of, like licensing type books. One style of book has just, I'm just going to show you all the answers to the questions and you're just going to memorize them. And I'm kind of looking for something that's not that kind of book, because I'm thinking that there's a lot of these kids that won't end up with a license, but I would like for them to walk away with some math or science or some other kind of STEM knowledge, not just the answers to a test that they might not take, So I've been kind of excluding the books that just go down the list and just try to teach you the questions. The other category of book has, talks about the concepts and such, but I find that a lot of those books, they tend to assume that, one, you're an adult, and two, you have some sort of technical background, So I was just wondering if anybody had any suggestions for, because my target audience right now is kind of like middle school, those ages. They asked me, who I would allow to be in the class, and I basically told them, if they can sit still and they're interested, then I'm willing to give it a shot. So we've got some, I would say 8 and above is kind of my range. I just thought if anybody had any suggestions for materials that I can pass along to the homeschool moms.
The Gordon West books that do
Okay,
fun stuff.
those are fairly user-friendly then?
Very user-friendly. And
Okay,
he has different age groups of books. So you could get a set of books for middle school age.
okay. I'll have
age.
to check those out. I wanted to get some recommendations before I actually plunk down any money to go find one, buy it and see what it is, because there's a lot of books out there.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, you
Wes?
had your hand up?
Yeah, but Barry nailed it. I was going to say the ARRL Technician's Manual. I'm thinking back to Now You're Talking. But even more recently, and then he said 8 years old and up. Made me think, okay, well, maybe not unless mom wants to get involved. But Gordo's stuff is really good, and he does address different age groups. So thank you, Barry.
Wes, Martha here. I recommend that you do a hybrid of the two goals you're trying to reach. If you look at the No Nonsense Tech guide, right now the tech guide is a free download. So there's your cost. But I recommend that you mix lessons out of that with some hands-on practical applications of what you just talked about. Split your session. Part, basically coursework, part, let's play with what we just went over. So
Yeah, so far,
take the best of both.
so far in our actual sessions, we haven't needed a book at all. I haven't been teaching out of a book. It's just been, instruction. And like, I have been giving them some sort of interactive or hands-on type of activity each week. And that I found that's the highlight. They just light up when
There you go.
this yesterday was this week's, we do it on Tuesdays, and yesterday we built a gummy bear mechanical wave machine. That was a lot of fun. If you've ever checked, there's YouTube videos out there of somebody else who's done this kind of thing, but it's kind of fun to kind of illustrate wave properties, and they had a lot of fun with that. So I'm always looking for any type of groups of people that I can kind of pick their brains, because like our next section, we're probably talking about modulation, and I'm racking my brains trying to figure out, okay, what can I do that's a hands-on kind of thing that doesn't cost too much, that we could do. So if anybody has any groups or resources of people that can kick around these ideas, because the more we can share this kind of thing, if somebody does it in one area, we can kind of share that and use those ideas in other groups around the country.
Okay.
So, what'd you think? I'll cut it there because we're almost done here. That was again the section managers and the section leaders of the ARRL, etc. Kind of beyond just the ARRL. Dan Marler is the guy in the K7 RAX. He was in like the second frame from the top left. And he's the organizers of these groups, and he had me come on and give these presentations. So I thought it'd be easy for me to come on and just like, boop, here's a presentation, and I can hang out in the chat and be able to share these ideas around, but also hopefully leverage the chat, which is kind of slim today. But thanks for being here, and thanks for the shout out, Ham Radio 2.0, to the old crew, the YTB crew, represent. And there's the dog. I gave him some popcorn, and now he really wants some more. And then he ate the cat food, and I guess he wants some more. So, pardon his barking and whining. Come here, Percy. Come here. Yeah. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about, I didn't really talk about much with these leaders, I guess, in ham radio, and a lot of old timers, is video games, because I don't really know how well I could relate to video games to these guys because, for one reason or the other. But to you YouTubers out there, a much younger crowd, especially my audience, video games, what do you think? How can we integrate video games into ham radio? Or let me better yet think of flipping that on its head, and how can we leverage or how can we innovate ham radio by gaming? And okay, contesting, sure, but like, what about contesting 2.0? Like ham radio 2.0, you have the perfect username for this. You should have the idea here. Contesting 2.0. Think of it like, instead of an actual contest where you sit down and like you run through 1,000 calls for 24 hours, and by the end of it you're tired and you never want to get into ham radio again. You keep hearing this ghost code. I think it'd be a lot easier to deal with a shorter, duration, where not just in a sprint type of thing where it's pre-planned, but like a lobby, like when you're in a game, multiplayer game, you start the game up, you get put into a lobby, and that is a matchmaking lobby. It basically finds all the other people out there. Make sure he's not chewing on anything bad. Okay, good. He's chewing on a chewy. All the other people out there to create a match in real time that you all can play against. Just like right now, Among Us is huge. You go into Among Us, there's like 100 billion people playing, and they find like 10 of your nearest of those 100 billion people, and they match you up, and then you find out who the imposter is. Now, you can imagine if there was enough people in ham radio that were just on the air, like sitting and waiting, we could create a matchmaking like device or mechanism where you could just theoretically be on a radio and you get like these reports or these commands or these objectives. Like there'd be like specific stations to contact, specific messages to hear, even like automated messages. Like if your radio is not tuned to 14263 at this time to receive this little blurb, you won't get the points or something like that. Like the mind can be endless here. But crazy cool 2.0 type integrations with that kind of world it really talks to me. But something Martha said is like, not all young people are into contesting, which is very true. Like I'm kind of short-sighted because I love contesting and I think it's one of the best ways to get young people involved. But still, lots of young people don't really mind for it or don't really care for it too much. So what are some ways we can deal with that? Well, she brings up activities like high altitude ballooning and kite. You can even do kiting. You can do rocketry, radio control, aerobatics, aircraft and drones and stuff. So like there's some things there, but making those more interesting and easier to get into because they all by themselves have a lot of, a big barrier to entry. For example, a high altitude balloon is pretty expensive. It requires a lot of coordination, requires a lot of electronics, a lot of costs and stuff like that. For like a full-size weather balloon, maybe a Mylar balloon is not so expensive, but it's still, pretty technically challenging. So, but yeah, that's some of the ideas out there, and I'll leave it at that. And if you watch this on the flip side, make sure to like listen through and answer some of these questions, because this is a big pressing question. If we don't get some answers to basically how we can make ham radio better for young people and how we can get more young people interested into it, well, look, if you saw the guys on that Zoom chat, imagine what happens in 20 years, even 10 years, what the numbers are going to do. And for like I said last week, we might not ever see a change. It might always just stay like this. Ham radio might always just be an old person's hobby. I mean, that might be fine. But we don't know right now because we don't have data. And it seems to me like we should be erring on the side of caution. But not only that, that's really like kind of lower down. What's really important is trying to get ham radio into the hands of more young people, because it's such a useful tool for your for a young person's career and for their interests. It's far better than drugs by a long shot, and quite a bit better than alcohol too, if I'd say so myself. But yeah, Andy, like ideas like that, code for a pie and make Morse code into a game. I've seen you talking about like remote plane satellite, all of those things. Very good ideas. The problem is it's a simple matter of programming, and I say the problem because it's a simple matter of programming. No one out there is doing it, and that's the hardest part to get past. I'm like tired. I need a drink of water. I'm not a programmer, and if I was, you would never see me. Like I would be just crunching out code like nonstop to this end. But instead, I have other talents where I just true, Jason. It is better with alcohol. Um, but I have these talents of being able to share stories and video and do that, which is easy, I guess. But I can't code. So this is what I can do is try to inspire you people out there to code, and a lot of this kind of next generation of ham radio is going to come through the means of programming and software and code, new stuff like that. You can only do so much with just creating more contests, creating more events and activities. I think the biggest like what do you call it, like the biggest technology maturation, or better yet, the biggest like shift, the generational shift in ham radio is going to come when it almost entirely becomes integrated into a web app, where your radio is like in some faraway place on the cloud, or maybe you have a box on your desk, and through that web app you have access to like these games, these activities, these science articles, these crazy things, virtual reality. I don't know. I'm just like spitballing here, so I'll stop before people, think I'm crazy. And with that, it's been a whole stinking hour and 2 minutes, so I'm gonna say 73 to you guys, and thanks for watching. Next week is kind of up in the air. I don't know what I'm gonna do for the live stream because it's going to be more like we've reached the end of like all of the pre-done presentations, so I might actually have to do some more work and come up with something new and novel. And maybe next time I'm going to like put out the notification that I'm going live today. But every Wednesday it's at 8 p.m. Central. I'll be here. Just you wait. All right. With that, I'm out of here. 73 guys and girls and all my YouTube buddies. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time from N0 SSC. Also, my dog literally just farted.